A lot of people are still wondering. It's been a week now, and we're wondering why hasn't Arizona finished the count? And I think that's a question we get every cycle.
It is, and we get it more and more as the races become closer and closer here in the state. And I think that, we knew going into this, Maricopa County told us it would be 10 to 13 days. What we didn't know is that other counties would also have trouble counting ballots in a timely fashion. And there's a lot of reasons for that across the state.
If you can kind of narrow it down to Pima County where we are, they've had some issues. They say the two-card ballot, kind of adds some time because they got to take it out of the envelope, inspect it, and then of course when they're putting the cards in, if they're counting 30,000 cards, it's only 15,000 votes. Um, anything else you're hearing about Pima?
Yeah, well, like you said, a lot of it is on the processing side where they're opening the envelopes and they're having to, inspect them. There's a lot of voter mistakes happening across the state, including in Pima County, where you get a very long ballot and you try to fill it out and you get halfway through and you make a mistake. And sometimes you would, at a polling place, request a new ballot. But if you're halfway through this very long ballot, do you really want to start over? And so people that are trying to process these ballots now are having to decide what these voters meant to do when they made a mistake. And that is taking more time than it typically does. And we're seeing a lot more voter errors across the state. So I think that is playing in once the envelopes are open. Now in Pima County, you're having to go through voter intent, and they do this electronically. They're looking at a computer with a bipartisan team. It's a very cumbersome process. And so that's why the returns are still taking a while.
They said about 62,000 left in Pima. Our Pima County Elections Director, Constance Hargrove, said she thinks that her team will finish the ballots they have in house by tomorrow. Um, I'll be over there a little later today, but still, there's some provisional ballots that will likely come, and some of those will be counted, and some of those won't be. And I wonder if you think Arizona, as someone who covers this every day, needs to change the system.
Well, first, you mentioned provisional ballots, and I wanted to point out that there's going to be more provisional ballots probably this year in Pima County because of some misinformation that was going around. And that was telling college students that they could vote even if they weren't registered in the county. I don't know where that started from, but it was on all the college campuses in the state, and those provisionals are taking longer to process too. I think there were more than 10,000 in Pima County. So that's going to be this week, even if the most are counted by tomorrow, you might have some of those. As far as if we need to change things, I think we need to talk about if what weigh voter convenience over the timeline and timeliness of results. And a lot of voters love to drop off ballots on election day at polling centers. Those are the ones that we're still counting today. And if we were to cut off that system before election day, you cannot take your ballot in an envelope to a polling place. You have to turn those in before election day. That would speed it up. If we told people you have to bring an ID with you when you drop it off, and we're going to use that ID to verify your identity instead of checking your signature later, that's another option. But that again, people would have to be waiting in line on election day to do that instead of just putting it in a box. So it's again a voter convenience versus results timing issue. And I think those are the questions that are definitely coming up in the legislature next year.
Let me follow up with that. What do you expect the legislature to kind of talk about in the upcoming session starting in January? I would have to imagine that this is going to be kind of a front and center issue at some point.
We already have Republican state lawmakers saying that they're going to reintroduce bills on this, whether it's the bill that was introduced since I think at least 2023 in the state to cut off that timing the Friday before the election, whether we're now requiring counties to have a process to check IDs on the spot. These are both things that I've seen state lawmakers say they will reintroduce, but that Democrats, especially our Governor Katie Hobbs, has rejected in the past. Whether there'll be more pressure on her, whether there'll be some sort of compromise that is reached, remains to be seen. I think Democrats might need to compromise a little bit more going into this session, considering they now don't have as much of a minority as they used to be one man down, and now it's going to be a little bit more than that. So they might need to reach across the aisle a little bit more, and maybe this is an area where they can talk about doing that.
Maricopa said it would be 10 to 13 days. It looks like they're going to, beat that timeline. They could probably finish by tonight, maybe tomorrow. I wonder what you say as someone who covers this so closely and so well. I wonder what you say to those who continue to question the process and continue to sow doubt in our election integrity.
I say that these are very hardworking people trying to get you the results as accurately and quickly as possible. And I've watched it, I've talked to them, knowing them personally, knowing how they put their heart into this, and seeing all the rumors around how the delay is somehow related to fraud is really disheartening because I know how hard they're working. The system is set up this way. The system is set up to give them time to count. If we want to change the system, that's not on them. And so I think that's one thing that's been, getting under my skin a little bit this week is that these are very hard working people working long hours right now that are just trying to get you the results when they can.
Two last questions. The board of soups here, I think it's every board has to certify by the third by I think it's the 21st, I believe, in November, and then of course the canvas comes after that, statewide canvas on the 25th. Um, you know, do you ultimately think that maybe we'll have to rethink a two-card ballot in the near future? I mean, that has caused some of the delays. Of course, there was also a tabulator issue, I should point out, in Cochise County, and they're still um, behind.
Yeah, I think there's some considerations that should be made by county supervisors and recorders across the state as far as how we approach the next cycle and whether that is trying to somehow fit everything on one page. It's impossible, though, to do that when you get 15 measures from the legislature. So some counties were able to pull it off by splitting like English and Spanish languages separate. But in Maricopa and Pima, they already do that. So there wasn't, there's not a lot of options. Another option is just simply trying to add more staff, trying to get these budgets increased get more machines and more staff, bigger buildings across the state. So there's other options. I think all of that is on the table.
We're seeing about 62,000 left in Pima. Any other thoughts you have as we kind of wrap up here?
I think that it's interesting in Pima County because you have Pima County and Cochise County kind of overlapping on a few important districts, and they're both lagging in reporting the results. And we're seeing for the first time that this isn't just Maricopa County where counting takes a while. And so I think it is a conversation about, like I just said, staffing levels and space and what we need as we continue to grow as around the state, not just in Maricopa County, to support the people that are doing this work and to perhaps look at our laws too.
Let me follow up with the Cisco Monte Angle race just for one last. It's about a 4,900 vote lead for Cisco Monte. Decision desk called it. We wait for the AP. That could come anytime. But that, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the 218th seat that the GOP needs to clinch the House majority. Pima might be a little bit more friendly to Angle. It's Cochise is likely more friendly to Cisco Monte. Any thoughts there as we wait for more votes on this critical House seat?
Well, I think if Decision Desk already called it, then they're pretty com I hope they wouldn't, they wouldn't mess up there. But like you said, I think AP is the place to look at for when that call is made. And it's interesting as the results come in from Pima, you go this way, and then the results come in from Cochise, you go the other way. And it's just showing how close our elections here are and how patient we need to be. Hopefully, we're not in recount territory. We haven't mentioned that yet, but there is a potential that, any race in the state that's very close within a few hundred, a few thousand votes for the larger ones could be in this recount territory where we're into now the end of November, December, recounting the ballots, which no one wants to be there.
And if you can just the state law changed for the recount margin, so it allows for an expanded margin, which means more races could be in the automatic recount territory. Can you kind of explain that?
Yeah, so the law beforehand was kind of on par with the rest of the United States as far as when we do an automatic recount. We shrunk that down because of our close races and the calls for the audits after 2020. This is like our form, our way, the Republicans' way of getting that audit in a different way by narrowing the margin to 0.5% that you have to be separated in your race to get that automatic recount, less than that. So I think, if you have a few thousand votes in like in the Congress race, for example, I don't think we'll be there, but that is such a small margin now or it's such a larger margin now that we're looking at that we might have more states, more races across the state that fall into there.
Finally, if there's one message you want to get across, what do you think Arizonans most need to know?
I think I said this before, but there may be a resource issue here when it comes to counting. In Cochise County, we saw that they had only one main tabulator for counting the ballots. And if we're worried about like how long this is taking us, we there should be a conversation about, especially in, a place like Pima County that has such unique rural areas, ballots coming in later, all of that really needs to be taken into consideration for what resources we give election officials to work with.
Jen Fiefield with Votebeat.org. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you for your expertise and thank you for sharing some thoughts with us.
Thank you for having me on.